Welcome back to the studio at Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb, and with me is Kimberly McNabb. So a movie we're definitely going to be reviewing soon by Angel Studios. It's the same company that brought Sound of Freedom, which we both really enjoyed. But it's going to be Sound of Hope, where all 22 families in a small Texas town, the church, they adopted 77 local foster children.
Well, I would say these days that could be quite difficult for a church to do that. In April, the Biden administration's Department of Human Health Services enacted safe, appropriate foster care placement requirements, which are set to take effect in 2026. Conservative commentators are concerned that this will require foster families to honor children's gender identity. While this does not include language requiring families to give minors puberty blockers and surgery.
Thank God.
Yeah, but one can conclude that it's not a big stretch because the language does provide a supportive environment.
I can't believe that. But the administration claims it's doing this because 30% of foster kids identify as LGBTQ+, and 5 times more likely to be trans. And I would really want to get to the root cause of why that would be. I mean, we've talked about in the past that there is just this exponential growth of LGBTQ and trans, people that are identifying as that, much more than any past generation. Which leads me to is it a genetic defect that's happening, or is it just social media that's making it the cool thing to do? But I'm thinking it's the latter.
Well, yes. I mean, just think about when we were teenagers and all the things that we did or say or even wore, the hairstyles that we had back in the 80s and 90s, that there's no way we'd do that. But because everyone else around us was doing it, we thought it was a cool thing to do. And anybody who really wants to get to the truth and like the sheer facts behind this should read Miriam Grossman's Lost in Translation book, as well as Abigail Schreier's Irreversible Damage and Bad Therapy. And just, that the latter one talks about how the therapists are, while they should be teaching children positive behavioral things, like, okay, you find yourself in this situation, just take deep breaths kind of thing, or getting to the root cause of why they're in distress. They may have ADD, they may be bipolar. No, they're just labeling everyone as with the same prescription of being trans. I mean,
that's
it's
crazy.
Just mental laziness. It's corrupt. I mean, it's just wrong. But back to the foster kids individually, I would say that, they suffer from abuse and neglect, and those things can cause mental illness. I mean, children are meant to be in steady environments. Every therapist will say that, will agree to that, and a stable life and even routine and structure. They respond best to those things. And when you're in the foster care system, you don't have those things. Now, case in point, the movie Sound of Hope does make mention of a child that was abused and then thought and acted like a cat. So showing, these environments can cause mental breakdowns.
Now it's kind of like the furries thing that we were talking about
Yes.
a few episodes ago. Okay.
Yes. And Texas CASA Mental Health Task Force website says that foster kids are 30%, same percentage, more likely to be mentally ill. So same percentage as LGBTQ.
Okay.
Also, most kids end up in foster care because of neglect, whereas most people think it's just strictly abuse. And parents don't just neglect kids from food, but also guidance and attention. If you just throw them an iPad or a computer, so you're not attentively there, they can go and do all sorts of things. They can get on all sorts of websites, and I'm willing to bet they're not looking up Einstein's theories on physics either.
And they're probably getting into online chats, whether it's an app that's dedicated to that or playing a video game that has an in-game chat feature.
Or even porn. I mean, who knows what they're getting into. So when you introduce an idea that will get them all the intention and praise and a sense of empowerment that they are promoting on some of these online chats and websites, the community gives them all this praise and attention and a sense of empowerment, and, from changing their pronouns and whatnot. I mean, how can kids that have been neglected their entire lives from the foster care system resist?
Yeah, I can see that, as you're looking at positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, and things like that, acting out or declaring that you're the acronym, you're going to get a lot of
attention,
attention.
Yeah. Whereas you go to these same people and say, "Oh, I picked up a Bible today," you're not.
Right.
You're going to get the same type of attention. And kids, these kids are also more likely to be LGBTQ because it is, like we were just saying, a social contagion.
Right.
And, foster homes also typically tend to house more than just one or two children. So if they see one kid getting praise and attention from coming out or changing their pronouns, I mean, again, how are they supposed to resist it?
Yeah, I can only, it's peer pressure. So it could be pressure as well. But then again, it's that positive reinforcement where you're looking at something and saying, that person's getting a lot of attention. Maybe I could do that as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that goes back to basic human behavior, whether
Sure.
you're talking about a toddler or whatnot. People are going to respond to those incentive structures.
Well, conservatives are concerned that foster families will not be licensed or will have their licenses taken away if they do not sign that they will be supportive.
Yeah.
I see this as hugely problematic.
Right. Well, I did look at some of the language in these requirements, and what I read is that the rule does not require any provider to become a designated placement,
Okay.
and specifies that nothing in the rule should be construed as requiring or authorizing a state to penalize a provider that does not seek or is determined not to qualify as a designated placement.
Well, again, the problem, even before this, is that there have always been cases of foster families being denied licenses or having pre-existing long-term status being removed. I can plainly see that in instances where there was a lot of hubbub going around with Christian families or Catholic families being denied an opportunity to adopt and or foster children. But Tulsi Gabbard wrote in her book about an already approved foster family having their rights removed in Vermont, and it's already asked specifically if you'll take kids to gay pride parades. In Oregon, the state already required a signature to have a license at all that said you're going to do those type of activities. And so, that just seems like, one, it's a forcing function to deliberately expose young children to LGBTQ events. I mean, let's just say that that they had no interest, but you've signed a piece of paper that says you're going to take them anyway. Something I've always noticed. It's interesting how libraries have children's reading hour drag queen events, but for some reason they don't have senior citizen library drag queen events. Why is it always geared towards the children?
I would say the senior citizens are far more lonely and appreciative for people to come visit them as well.
Right. Yeah.
What's the agenda, right? So the real problem is how it would be executed, these requirements, and I can see that eventually leading to a federal level that if one does not do pronouns, even here in Texas, we could have the natural born children taken away. And this has already happened in Indiana where parents wouldn't do the pronoun thing for their own child,
right,
and the child was taken away.
Yeah, I cannot believe that we are evolving into the thought police. I mean, it has been happening slowly, but it is steady. And to have the thought police come in and say, you are not using the correct pronouns, therefore you're a bad parent, that's just, it blows my mind. It absolutely blows my mind. But again, we're hammering at an issue where the majority is being harmed, what really is just a small minority of the population that this is. I mean, I got it. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but still, we're talking about, as far as the population of the United States, and if it's even smaller, if you look at the population of the world, that we're spending all this time and energy after an extremely small minority of Americans. But look, if you're required to take the kids to parades, you're essentially participating in the indoctrination of what might not have occurred, a hard life to begin with. I mean, I see forcing children to go to things that they may not want to go to, but signing a pledge in order to be a foster parent, that's just rewarding failure, in my opinion. I mean, when really you should be supporting success. But there's already way too foster families available, but now they're removing the greatest source, religious families.
Yeah, I mean, according to Barna research, religious Christians are twice more likely than the average American to adopt, and evangelicals are 5 times more likely than the average American to adopt. And that is especially true for older children and those with disabilities. And, it's not just, promoting Christianity. Like, their churches help not just in figuring out the process of adopting children, but also in raising them, including homework assistance.
Yeah, since religious Christians are more likely to refuse to sign on to be a designated placement, the foster care system, a lot of these states are going to dictate their own systems until there is eventually probably a federal guidelines that are put out. But again, they're funded by the federal government, so oftentimes there are little trinkets that are dangled, or sticks that are wielded.
Remove your federal funding.
Yeah, and the Department of Human Health Services is funding these, and so they're able to not necessarily pass laws, but give guidance, and that guidance could be, you're not getting federal dollars unless you follow our guidance. Well, it's not a law. It's just that we have the ability to redirect funding.
Exactly. Well, some of you may be able to guess who pushed these requirements. The Admiral himself, bureaucrat, swamp rat himself, Rachel Levine.
Yeah, that was the Babylon Bee's Man of the Year 2 years ago.
Who apparently is too radical, not just for the state of Alabama, which has a ban on puberty blockers and surgeries for minors, but for WPATH, of all people, groups of people who are specifically named in Miriam Grossman's Lost in Translation book.
Yeah, according to the New York Post, the international group capitulated and removed the text in violation of its own process, despite preference of its own committee members to retain the age limits after the pressure campaign. This is absolutely just mind-blowing that even WPATH's guidance recommended age minimums, finally, age minimums, 14 for hormone replacement, 15 for mastectomies, 16 for breast augmentation, and 17 for genital surgeries. I think all of these ages are ridiculous. It should be, I believe, like 25 when your frontal cortex is fully formed for you to figure that stuff out. But this is going from no restrictions to finally putting down some age restrictions.
Well, WPATH's 8th edition of Standards of Care, released in September 22, had no age minimums for transgender procedures. The thing I noticed was to get breast augmentation is older than replacing them at all.
Right.
Or removing them entirely. I'm like, you can always get fake ones taken out if you change your mind later, but you can't have real ones put back in. So if anything, it should be the reverse. That's so ridiculous. I mean, it's just.
But Levine did some backdoor. He furious that these age limits got put down, and did some backdoor channels in order to admonish the WPATH to change it, that there shouldn't be any ages whatsoever And so it's amazing that a far left organization like that finally recognized some medical science and did put some age guidelines in there. I still think they're way too young, but Levine was trying to get them to rescind that and get rid of the ages altogether again.
The funny thing is, he has been quoted, and Fox News, I'm ashamed of you referring to him as she. How dare you? But anyway, Levine is a pediatrician and taught pediatrics and psychiatry. You're like sunk into this mental madness, and it just shows you that no matter how educated you are, you can fall victim to this craziness. And he went to Hebrew school where they study the Talmud, and I've never read it, but I've heard so many people quote, stories and teachings from the Talmud, and they're so wise. And so again, just proof that the most educated people can fall victim to ridiculousness.
Well, I mean, here's a problem that I have with it. Okay, so Levine is a biological male, and he was happy that he did not transition early because of his kids. So he got to have a family, got to have procreate and have children, but yet he doesn't want your kids to have kids because he wants to transition them before they can go through puberty, before they can, intelligently have a family. And I think that is wrong. That's just
Absolutely.
wrong.
It's very hypocritical.
Absolutely.
And for all the people that want to, slam labels, oh, you're a bigot, you're a transphobe, blah, blah, blah. I'm pretty sure I've told the story about how I used to get electrolysis and the person doing it on my face for hours at a time was a transgender person. Before this was politicized, if I were truly a transphobe, I would not let them near my face and pay them money to do it.
Right.
And have very deep conversations with this person. And, all the people are like, oh, would you rather have a dead daughter than a trans son, blah, blah. No. The National Library of Medicine has on it that studies conclude people who underwent gender affirming, quote unquote, surgery had a 12-fold higher suicide attempt risk compared to those who did not. And transgender affirming surgery is significantly associated with elevated suicide attempt risk. So, sorry, spare me the labels.
Yeah, I don't think by doing this you're helping at all. In fact, I think obviously children
it's just to
need
blackmail
to be
parents.
Yeah, it's just to blackmail parents, and it's to deliberately exclude a group of potential foster parents that are on the by and by majority religious, right?
Yep.
And majority Christian. And so it is a deliberate attempt to exclude that population from helping some of our children that are at greatest risk.
Yes. I mean, you're hurting the most vulnerable people, which is all foster care children. You're removing your greatest resource. It's like saying, okay, well, we need ditch diggers. We're going to remove all the muscular men.
Right.
Like, why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense.
None of this makes any sense, but we saw this and we wanted to bring it to your attention. Please leave comments in the comment section below on what you think is going on in our society, that we're having just this huge influx of trans and LGBTQ population that's just kind of rising its head. Is it because they were just so suppressed for so long, and now that there's rules, they're able to come forward, or is there a biological thing going on where more people are not being, cisgender and male and female? I mean, I want to know. I really do. But we wanted to bring this to you, so thank you for tuning into Azimuth Podcast, and please stay tuned after these messages.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in. Well, our favorite lyrical poet has done it again. Let's talk about Oliver Anthony's latest hit, Cowboys and Sunsets. on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Kimberly McNabb, and with me is Barrett McNabb.
Yeah, Kimberly, I tell you what, when we saw this new song come out and new video, we were giddy because obviously, just like you, we love this guy, and we really want to bring you some of his newest music. And so let's go ahead and take a listen.
In my mind, it's 1990 something, and I'm young, I'm wild, and I'm free, and I don't care where time takes me. It can never take that from me. If I go missing, don't bother looking. I'm probably just right in the way. 'Cause cowboys and sunsets, you can always count on them, but never to stay. I guess I'm a cowboy, 'cause there's a sun set on the way.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just the first line got me, or the first part, young and wild and free. I mean, come on, most of us at least have felt that in our childhood. I mean, I remember being lost out in the woods, kind of like that, and not having, homework or parents telling you to do something, and you can just walk through the woods and observe. And yeah, time can't take that memory away from you.
Yeah, he's considerably younger than I am, so 1990 something is when he's a kid, right? And for me, I was the late 70s, early 80s as the same age as a kid. So I vividly still remember getting my big wheel and or upgrading to a bicycle and going around the neighborhood with my friends and going into the woods and pulling honeysuckle off fences and catching fireflies and doing that stuff and not
the
going
year
home.
Didn't matter in that case.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's the same memory, and obviously his kind of tortured past, where he had drug and alcohol addiction and had some significant emotional issues that he's since taken care of, but still, I would say that this is all pre his troubles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he remembers as a grown up and as an adult what it was like to be free and to not have any worries as a child.
Right. I looked up some of the YouTube comments just to kind of get an idea of what to talk about.
Sure.
And probably one of the longest bits was, I'm probably just riding the wind, as if you look up the lyrics, the text version. But other people commented like, oh, I thought he said right in the way, which, okay, if you're trying to find someone, but they don't really want to be found, they could get in the way.
Right.
Like, may not always find what you're looking for. Another commenter commented like riding away, which also makes sense because if you're a cowboy, you can do that.
Right. You can ride away into the sunset. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's exactly how every Western movie ends, is the protagonist on a horse riding into the sunset. I think that's exactly how every legitimate Western ends. So that makes a lot of sense. But let's keep going.
I don't know where I'm going. I guess some things, they never change. I just like to find where the wind blows, and the people, they ain't so damn strange. If I go missing, don't bother looking, I'm probably just right in the way. 'Cause cowboys and sunsets, you can always count on them, never to stay. I guess I'm a cowboy, 'cause there's a sunset on the way.
The soulfulness is still there. Obviously, we still see his dogs.
Right.
He's still out. He's getting a lot of production value with zooming in and out, a focus on the foreground, the midground, and then the background. So I think it's really cool that he's doing that. But it's just that soulfulness that he has that we all kind of long for.
Well, he also says a lot of relatable things.
Right.
Like, I don't know where I'm going. Well, I mean, a lot of us feel that way
I
a
still
lot of
don't
the
know where I'm
time. And I guess some things never change, meaning I never know where I'm going. I'm like, oh, goodness. Is he talking about me there? I don't know. But he also says, where the wind blows. Well, my first sarcastic thought is, where doesn't the wind blow?
Right.
And I think he just wants a sense of like, hey, I know what to expect, because in this crazy world that we live in, if you read the news at all, you're like, I didn't see that coming. Like, you just want some stability.
Yeah, I see that as well. I also see it, if you could imagine if you were a balloon, or if you were a bird, or you were a kite, you're kind of at the mercy of the wind. Right. And so it's blowing you around. It almost kind of reminds me a movie that was, I think, in the 2000s, American Beauty. Had Kevin Spacey as a lead actor, and a couple other people. But the next door neighbor was a big photography buff, and he, I think, and a movie buff as well. And he took a lot of film of this plastic bag caught in a vortex in between two buildings, and it just sat there and spun and spun and spun, and he's talking to the next door neighbor girl, and she's saying, what do you see? And he says, I see beauty in this bag just spinning around. And this is kind of the same thing. If you're a balloon or you're a kite, and you're flying through the wind, and the wind is really you're just riding on the wind, and how's your outlook going to be as you're along for the ride? And that's kind of what I thought about when I saw this and was talking about the wind, that bag scene from American Beauty.
I think that might be a good way to describe like the Cowboys riding off, just the in general, speaking of the song.
Yeah, the interesting thing on when I said earlier about cowboys riding off into the sunset, usually, again, it's the protagonist on the by and by, but usually it's after some mission or good deed has been finished, right? For these movies, and so the bad guys are taking over the town and burning crops, and the protagonist, the good guy, comes in and shoots them all dead, and the town is thankful, and we want you to stay and be the mayor. Nope, I got to keep moving. And so most of that time, when you're seeing that riding off in the sunset, is because something good has been done prior to that. And I think, looking at his life, having him say something good has been done and I'm continuing on my journey, it's a powerful imagery. Yeah. So we're going to keep going, because there's some of the melody that's still left. Yeah, I love this song, especially for its simplicity.
Right.
right? And that's the vast majority of his music is it's he has one instrument. Now, obviously, we've seen him touring in concert on video. We haven't actually been to a concert, but he's got a band going and stuff like that. But for him to have this just by himself, I really think that I look forward every time he puts something out. And I know you guys do as well.
Well, I think the good thing about his music is that it can teach a simple lesson,
right,
or make more complex commentary. And so maybe you can slap a stereotype on me, but as a woman, I'm reading a lot, a little more into it. But I do like your country western take on it, and that's probably where he's coming from.
Well, that's the beauty of his music. I agree with you. That's the beauty of his. You can be as shallow or as deep as you want to be with his lyrics and his music.
Like where people aren't so damn strange. I mean, come on.
Right.
I mean, because it feels like that in and of itself is a commentary on today's society. Just it's hard to make friends because you're like, oh God, how weird are they going to be?
Right.
Like, would they curse me for who am I voting for? Like how many areas, because it's hard to truly be friends with someone and feel like you can't talk to them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of, it is kind of interesting when you're meeting a new couple and obviously you're avoiding, what are the big three? Religion, politics, and Money? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But so you're kind of avoiding those. But then they're Jewish, and so are you upset, or what side are you leaning? Because there's Israelis and Jews that are pro-Palestine, and there's Jews that are like, hey, look, we're just fending for ourselves. How do you broach that conversation? So they're you're stepping in and dipping your toe in sometimes, and it's hard.
One thing may not necessarily tell you the other.
Yeah, exactly. So, but we love his music. We know you guys do. Please leave in the comments below what you think, some of the lyrics meant. Some of our past videos, we had some really good comments, and I had a lot of fun answering them and talking to them back and forth. So some of the comments went on, conversations went on, 7-8 threads, and so he was very pleased about that. But yeah, please give us a like, and we love Oliver Anthony music. We know you do too as well. So thank you for tuning in to Azimuth Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.
So imagine walking up to your front door, key in hand, and you see this. Let's talk about it on Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb, and with me is Kimberly McNabb. I tell you what, something happened 2 weeks ago that was not on my bingo card. As I was coming into the house and putting my key into the house, in between our garbage can and our recycle can, there was a pair of human legs sitting down, and I didn't know what to expect. I really didn't know. Is it Kimberly? Like, did she, get some really horrible news, and she just needed to sit down between two garbage cans? I mean, I had no clue. But as I'm putting my key into
women, we cry in the pantry. Okay.
The pantry, got it. Okay. But as I was putting my key into the lock of the front door, I looked down, and looking up at me is a completely naked woman, and she says, "Don't. Please don't." And I freeze because, again, it was not on my bingo card to have a naked woman, no shoes, no socks. I'm going to get descriptive. No shoes, no socks, no underwear, no bra, no dress, no jeans, no top. Completely birthday suit. Completely birthday suit, sitting in the gravel in between my two garbage cans.
Does she have any lacerations or
bleeding? So I'll get into that because we called 911 obviously, but she I hadn't looked her over yet because I was still kind of in shock, right? And so I say I put my hand out just in case she was going to rapidly stand up as I opened my door. I was going to put her back down on the ground so that she didn't come in the house. But I said, ma'am, it's going to be okay, and I'll be right back. So I go upstairs and walk up the stairs, and I see you at the kitchen table.
Yeah, I was like, who is he talking to? Our kids aren't supposed to come home from school for another 4 hours. Did you just rob us of 4 hours of school we're paying for?
I know,
what are
I
you
know.
doing?
So I said, no, there is a naked woman in between our 2 garbage cans sitting in the gravel. And Kimberly said, what? And I said, all of those words were in English. You just may have not have heard them in that order before because it was an absurd sentence to say. And you said, well, should you call 911? I said, well, hold on a second. So I said, go get a towel for me, please. And I went and got 2 bottles of water. It was really hot. It was really hot outside. So I go back out and I did go get a firearm and put it in my pocket. And I walked outside and she was gone. She was gone. And I said, ma'am? And she came back round the corner. We're going to be putting some footage up of a security camera of her walking around. Obviously, I'm going to be straining my photo
Editor.
photo editor. Premiere Pro is what I use to edit. I'm going to have to blur all kinds of things out. But still, she comes back around the corner and she is full frontal coming towards me. And so I kind of avert my eyes and I hold out the towel and I said, ma'am, this is for your modesty. And she put the towel on and I said, I have 2 bottles of water here for you because it's really hot. I'll put them down here. And she says, well, and she kind of got a little embarrassed and I could see that there was a
Water from the water
water
hose.
from the water hose that was there. And it was just absolutely weird as all get out. And she said, I drank from your hose. And I said, well, that's okay. That's okay. We'll make sure that we can, get you some fresh water with this bottled water. And so that's what I'd given her. I said, well, what seems to be going on? And she said, I've been kidnapped and I escaped and they killed my father and my brother. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, it's going to be okay. And then this whole time she was pretty calm, cool, and collected. But then all of a sudden, she became extremely animated and very aggravated. And she said, it's not going to be okay. And I said, all right, here's bottled water. I'm going to get you some help. So I go and I call 911. And the operator for 911, I forget, dispatcher, said, what, 911, what seems to be an emergency. And I said, look, there is a naked woman in my front yard of my house. And I said, she's about 5'7", about 150 to 170 pounds, brown eyes, white skin, brown hair, and kind of in a ponytail, not wearing any clothes. And the dispatcher says, so is there identifying clothing that the person's wearing? And I said, yeah, none. I mean, well, part of, again, those words were all in English, and she is wearing nothing. And so he kind of laughs because, obviously I had said that she was wearing nothing. And I said, but now she's wearing a gray towel because I gave her a gray towel. And I said, but she says that she's been kidnapped and that the kidnappers killed her brother and her father. And I said, but the interesting thing is that she is clean. She was clean. And she had a tattoo on her left shoulder, but on the by and by, she was relatively clean. Again, being 5'7" and 150 to 170 pounds, she was well fed. She was not malnourished. She did not look like she had been restrained in any way. There were no ligature marks where a cordage would have tied you up, or handcuffs or something like that. And I did notice that her teeth were not meth mouth where your teeth are rotting and stuff like that. And in my opinion, she didn't look like her eyes were pinpoints or blown out like she was high on anything. And so they said, okay, somebody will be there. So I go outside and to let her know that I'd gotten her some assistance, and she was gone, absolutely gone. So I walk around the front of the house. I go around to the side. We live on a little cluster of 9 houses. And here's one of the things that really bothered me. As we're putting up some of this security footage, you're seeing her on the street and multiple cars, at least 15 cars drive by.
She's not waving around any cars, and she is not running.
Well, there's that, but I'm surprised. Nobody has stopped to help her. Mm-hmm. Nobody has stopped. And so I'm very disappointed. If you saw any of this and you drove by,
person.
Shame on you. You should have, at least if you didn't want to stop, you should have called 911. But I was the only person to do it. And so I'm searching around, and I get a phone call because they asked for my phone number. I get a phone call, and a person identified as the sergeant that was sending 2 of his officers, HPD officers, to our location. And he just wanted some background, so he reiterated, not wearing anything. I said, well, she's wearing a gray towel now. And said, she said she was kidnapped, said that her father and brother were killed. And I said, yes. And I'll remember this forever. He said, well, it's one of 2 things. Either she's lying or she's telling the truth. And in my mind, I was like, we have got Inspector Clouseau here going on. This guy is top of his class to make detective any minute now. I'm sure he's going to do great on the detective exam. She's either lying or she's telling the truth. Profound. Profound. And I think he could hear me through the phone, and I think he got a little embarrassed because I was like, yes, you're absolutely right. She's either lying or telling the truth. And anyway, for those of you that may recall, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice with a specialization in law enforcement. So I was uniquely bemused by this sergeant's, Captain Obvious moment of that. So he said, well, his officers would be there. So they come, and oddly enough, they must have rehearsed this because they also said, well, it's one of 2 things. Either she's telling the truth or she's lying. And I was like, golly, this is like a rehearsed thing.
HPD common phrase or something.
Yeah, I guess so. So anyway, they asked about the drugs, and it sounds like she was on drugs. And I said, well, I gave my observations. Obviously, she's wearing this gray towel. She can keep it if you find her. I don't want it back. And they thought that was pretty funny. So they pulled their weapons and started clearing the cul-de-sac area that we live in, going behind people's houses and stuff like that, identifying themselves and looking for her. But gone, absolutely gone. We had no clue what happened. One of the things that they said was that if it was true, let's just say it was true, and you said you gave her some water. She didn't take the water, but she took the towel. But if it was true that she needed some help and you were going to go get help, she would have stayed.
Right. And also, she would not have been seen walking calmly on our neighbor's security footage.
Right.
She was just dun, 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 dun. I mean, cool, calm, and collected as could be. Whereas if I had been kidnapped and escaped my kidnapper and had just watched 2 loved ones get murdered, I would be flagging down cars. I'd be screaming. I would be crying. I'd go up to a gas station. This was in the middle of the day.
Right.
So, the gas stations are open. Like, please help me. Please help me. She did none of that. So, I mean, when I say drugs make you do things you normally would not do, it's not always just murder people or, steal your grandma's jewelry. Sometimes it's show up naked in a stranger's yard.
Yeah, exactly. Now, this was actually brought up by a work colleague of mine, and her theory is maybe the kidnappers went looking for her and grabbed her. Pulled her into their car, and that's why the police, couldn't find her. They spent the better part of 2 or 3 hours with canine units and multiple cars driving up and down the street. And They never found her.
Well, I mean, that would make sense, but also, again, you would not be calm, cool, collected, just moseying down the street, not flagging anybody to help you, none of that. So I'm having a hard time believing that. Plus, there are lots of little places, ditches,
Right.
in between people's houses, fences, places you can hide.
Right. Well, I mean, here's the biggest thing. She had to have been close by because
She was barefoot.
she was completely barefoot. So she didn't come from 10 miles away or 5 miles away, 3 maybe. But I think walking barefoot at 2 p.m. on hot concrete, you're not really making it very far. And so I went to all the neighbors.
Plus, she'd be a sweaty mess.
Yeah, exactly. And she really didn't look like she had that much perspiration on her. So I went to my neighbors and I said, hey, here's the situation. Because a lot of us have children. And so I just,
So
here's the
glad
situation.
you did not have the children
I'm
with you.
I'm so glad that I didn't have the children. I would not have been able to explain that.
They would, and plus, every time any little thing happens, they'll remind you about it 14 months later, but yet they can't remember that you told them to put on shoes 5 times already.
Right.
So we would still be hearing about it.
Right. So I talked to some of my fraternity brothers, and
Guess what the first question was?
I mean, it's like they rehearsed it. I talked to 3 of my fraternity brothers, and it's like they rehearsed it as well, because the first question out of their mouth was she hot? And I was like, oh my God, you're missing the whole story of what's going on here. And that's the part they wanted to know. No, she was not. As you can clearly see in the footage, she's not. And so, but still I was like, good God, these guys rehearsed it, the same question in the same amount of time of me telling the story. But still, this was not on my bingo card for that week. And we still, to this day, do not know what happened.
Nope.
But still, to be walking up, and again, we'll have a photograph of a recreation, but you'll be able to see the distance in between the 2 garbage can and recycle bin, and the distance between the houses is pretty. It's about only 6 feet in the distance between the houses. But this was, again, just one of those things. It's a story you can't make up unless it really happens to you. But we wanted to bring this story to you. And thanks for tuning in to Azimuth Podcast.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all of the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.